If you don't get to be a part of the children's offering, and you don't get to see what goes on back there, you miss it. You need to sit back farther back. Man, it's like a circus back there. Man, there are kids with dollar bills hanging out of their pocket. You know, they got, little old hands got coins, and it's amazing to watch them, especially down here. Because we got so many little ones down there. I mean, it's a circus anyway. But to watch them with all that money, it's fun to watch. It really is. I preached something similar to this a while back. I want to do it again because I know that in this room there's a lot of anxiety, fear, despair, depression. There's a lot of things going on in your lives that you can't control. There are things that you've just been made aware of that you had no idea was coming. And the need to hide has become a problem in your life. For some, it won't ever go away. It won't go away without a doctor helping you. But I'm going to talk to you about a guy that I introduced to you 3 weeks ago. I preached about a man standing in the gap, if you remember, if you were here. That text was from Ezekiel chapter 20, and it was about God looking for a man to stand in the gap. And we found a guy, and his name was Elijah, a man who was willing to stand in the gap with God. He was willing to take on the tough stuff. And I'm just going to review some for you and give you some facts about his life, because I'm going to assume that most of you do not know. I know there's a bunch of you in here that would not know. Buck's sitting back there, and Buck knows who Elijah is. He knows all about Elijah. He knows, he knows exactly what I'm going to be talking about. But those of you who don't know who he is, Elijah was a man of God who came from a nondescript town in the middle of nowhere. Didn't have anything going for him, and God called him to stand with him, and he went. And Elijah, his job was going to be to stand up against the most corrupt, the most vile, the most despicable, the most ungodly, unholy man and his wife that Israel had ever seen. In fact, God says that he is worse than all of them together. He is that bad. And Elijah is going to be called to go to him. And last month, we looked at him going to him and what that meant in his life and what had to happen. Elijah prays for it not to rain, and it doesn't rain for 3 years. And then after a period of time, God calls Elijah after he's had him in the wilderness, and after he has fed him with birds and he's gotten his water from a brook, and God's called him and said, I want you to go back. I want you to go back to where you came from. I want you to go back to Ahab and Jezebel. And he goes back to them, and he tells them, when he gets there, he tells them, when he walks in, Ahab says, there you are, you troubler of Israel. And as Elijah tells him, it ain't my fault. You're the one that brought this on yourself. And then, after a bit, Elijah has a run-in with these prophets that Ahab and Jezebel have, 850 of them. And you can go read this story in 1 Kings chapter 18. We're going to be in chapter 19 when we get there. But I wanted you to know what this guy's got going for him. Because when it comes to fear and despair and depression and anxiety, you got nothing on Elijah. Nothing on him. Okay? And we'll look at that in a minute. And I wanted you to see that even a man of God, even a man who's been called by God, who's willing to stand in the gap, can get down and get full of self-pity and become alone and become nondescript himself. So if that's where you are this morning, you join good company. So Elijah has a confrontation with these prophets of Baal and these prophets of Asherah. And he taunts them, and he's sarcastic with them, and he ridicules them all during this whole day that they have interaction with them. And ultimately what happens is he taunts them to perform a certain miracle that will help everyone to know that their God is real. Well, what happens is Elijah proves that his God is real, and his God proves that he's real. And you need to go read the story. I wanted you to see that when it came to Elijah being able to have a connection with God, he prayed that it wouldn't rain, it didn't rain. He prayed that it would rain, and it did rain. He prays that fire would come down from heaven, and fire came down from heaven and consumed them. And then he decides, we're going to kill all these prophets, and they kill every one of them. They put them all to the sword. Now, you have to understand that Ahab and Jezebel are probably not going to be happy about this turn of events. Well, when you look at 1 Kings chapter 19, and that's where I want to go first, we're going to look at verse 1 and 2. I want you to see what happens here. All right? Remember, we have a guy named Elijah who has power from God. He has said, I'm going to stand in the gap with God, and I'm going to stand there with Him, and I am going to stand up against evil. And he does that. And it takes one turn of events, and his whole world melts around him. Look at what it says in verses 1 and 2. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Now Jezebel's found out. And I told you 3 weeks ago, Ahab was bad. He didn't know how to handle this woman. This woman was a snake. This woman was bad. And so it says, so Jezebel sends a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them. Now, she's going to pray to her gods that Elijah knows aren't real. Elijah knows because he just had a confrontation yesterday and nothing happened when they prayed to that God, those gods. Nothing happened. And yet she uses these same gods. I'm going to call these gods, and they're going to come down, and I'm going to make sure they help me make you just like one of them, make you dead. I'm going to make you dead. Now, that doesn't seem like much, does it? It must have been a whole bunch, because the next two verses says that Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Wow. One woman pitches out one threat, and this guy has a meltdown. So you can understand, if you're sitting here this morning and you've had a meltdown for one reason or another, whatever it may have been, lost your job, found out that somebody doesn't love you anymore. Maybe you found out that you're sick. Maybe you're really sick. Maybe you found out that nobody loves you anymore, or that's what you think. Maybe you found out that something, you woke up this morning and there's something wrong with you that wasn't wrong with you yesterday. And that may be the trigger that sends you into a meltdown to where you run for your life. Do you hear the self-pity in Elijah? He said, I am so tired. Please, I'm tired. I just want to die. I'm no better than my fathers, than my ancestors. Wow. What a meltdown. And I thought about this yesterday as I was preparing, and I thought, I know of some people that are going to be here this morning that are struggling with staying above water. They're struggling with just finding a way to take a breath every day because life has been so tough. A single mom trying to raise kids by herself all of a sudden. A guy decide he doesn't have a job anymore. He doesn't know why. Just doesn't have a job anymore. Now he's got to figure out, how am I going to take care of my family? And for some, that can be that thing that melts them down to a place where they can't come back from. Where they look in the mirror and everything they see is no good. that I am worthless. It's hopeless. And the self-pity starts to raise its ugly head. And then if you see what it says that Elijah did, he said in verse 3, he said Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there. Depressed people are lonely people. You know why? Because they push everyone away from them. They push people away. And they become very lonely and very isolated. We do that, don't we? I remember when it used to happen to me all the time. And I would push my wife away and push my children away to a place where I was a shell of myself. And look in the mirror and just loathe what I saw. Could not believe that I was worth living and worth loving. That's where Elijah is. That's where he is. And if this guy, it can happen to him, you know what? It can happen to you. And it can happen when you least expect it. And it may have already happened to you lately. Maybe you're looking at yourself and saying, man, he's talking about me. No, I'm not. I don't know who you are. I have no idea. But I know that in a room this size and people on the internet, I guarantee you there's somebody watching us. Somebody's watching us. That they are been struggling with it. It was so bad, they decided not to go to church somewhere. They decided maybe not to come here. I'll watch it, but that's as much as you're going to get out of me, God. I'll watch it. That's all I'm going to do. And I just told them, I understand. I understand. I've been there. Been there. That's where Elijah is. Elijah may watch, but he ain't going to church. You know why? Because he's run. He's run away. And some that you know, or maybe some of you, you have run away. You have run away and you're here, but you're not here. You're here because you know you're only supposed to be here. You're not here because you want to be here, because you know that this is where God needs you to be. You've run and you're afraid. You're afraid of what's going to happen next. You're afraid of how bad could it get? If it's this bad now, how bad could it get next week or next month? And I want you to see what happens, okay, to this guy, this man of God who's run, who's got it all figured out. He figured out, I know what's going on, and I'm tired, and I'm done. And this is the guy who has called fire from heaven, called water from heaven, and made heaven close up and didn't rain anymore. That's the guy. And I don't know anybody in this room that has the power to do any of that, do we? Don't. And this guy, he's got a connection like this with God. And he's gone off into a pit somewhere. And I want you to look at verse 5. Well, we're going to look at verse, I don't know what you got up, Tim, but I want to look at verse 7. Let's look at verse 7. That's what you got, verse 7. Now, he's gone, he went a day, okay? Now, don't look up there yet. Look at me. He went for a day without his guy there. And then he goes for another 40 days. He keeps going. He keeps running. So he's ran for 41 days. He's gone. So he's gotten a long ways away. And he's trying to get as far away from any of this as he can. You think he might be running away from God? You ever tried that? Guess what? There ain't no place you can go to get away from him. Now, he says in verse 7, the angel of the Lord came back a second time. Now, the angel of the Lord's already found him. He's already there, been there, and told him some stuff. And you need to go read all this. I don't have time to read it all. He said, get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. What? God's been pushing him. He said, you got some ways to go yet. You're not finished. I'm not finished with you. I don't care how you feel. I'm not finished with you yet. I got more for you to do. You think that's what Elijah wanted to hear? I don't think so. You know, when you go into a deep, dark tank and have God show up and whisper in your ear and say, you need to get up and get out of this tank. I got something else for you to do. Wait, you don't understand. I ran away from you and crawled in this tank so I wouldn't have to deal with you. He said, I don't care what you were doing this for. I've got a job for you, and you're not done yet, and you're not strong enough at this point, so I got to feed you, and I got to get you, and I got to nurture you and get you upright. And then he says in verse, and I want you to go, what do you got next, Tim? What did I tell you? Keep going. He says, so he got up and ate and drank, strengthened by the food, and traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went to a cave and spent the night. Now, the rest of this I'm not going to read to you yet. I'm not going to read to you. I want you to read it. But what happens is he goes in this cave. He's been gone for 41 days. God's got him up and told him, get. So he gets. And he finds himself in this cave, and and God shows up. God starts talking to him. And he shows up, and there's all kinds of cataclysmic events that happen to him. God ain't in him. And then all of a sudden he hears this gentle whisper. And he throws his cloak over his head because he knows that God just showed up. God just showed up for him. And remember what he already told him 40 days ago? He said, I ain't through with you yet. You may be done, but I'm not done with you. So get up and get moving. And so, and remember, this is the guy, he's mad, he's afraid, and he's running. And then look at verse 14. Well, I'm gonna read the one before it. I don't know that I have. He asked Elijah, God asked Elijah, I'll just tell you what he said. He asked Elijah, what are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing? What are you running for? What are you afraid of? What are you so depressed about? You think he could ask one of us that? You think he could ask that? Valerie, what are you doing? So, Mary Jane, you're sick. I understand. What are you doing? You don't run. You don't run. I wanted to show you in a minute what Elijah, I think, teaches us when this stuff happens to us. So this has pretty much been all an introduction. No, I'm not preaching for another 25 minutes, I promise. Look at verse 14. It says, and Elijah replies, I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, tore down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. Oh, woe is me. Oh, man, I'm tired. I'm kicking the dirt, acting like a fool. And he's talking to God and said, you don't understand something, Elijah. Let me tell you something. I got something. I want you to go do this. I want you to go pick this guy, and this guy. All right? I want you to pick 3 guys. They're going to take care of these problems that you think you had. And oh, by the way, I got 7,000 folks still reserved that never bowed their knee to Baal. Just because you don't know there's a plan, just because you don't know there is a plan, don't mean there ain't one. Okay? Let me tell you that again. Just because you don't know what the plan is, don't mean there's not a plan. You got it? You can be all pouty-faced. You can be, kicking the dirt and acting like a fool, and be steeped in it. Self-pity, running for your life. And God said, I got a plan. I still got time. I got stuff I need you to do. And you need to get up and get busy. It's time to stop. He said, and I wanted to take you back to our Psalm 91. And I'm going to use this kind of as an invitation kind of, meat kind of thing. If you don't learn anything from Elijah, learn that what God is trying to teach us through Elijah is quit looking inward, look up. Look up. You don't always know what's going on. You don't. And I want us to read it. Vincent did a great job reading this and and doing a prayer about it. But I want to show you 3 things that he says here, and then I'm going to be done. He said, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Now, what he's talking about here is, if I have a relationship with God, even somewhat similar to Elijah, if I have a relationship with God, and I rest with Him, and I take shelter in Him, if I have that relationship, He has made that possible for me. I love the way Mark did it to me. It was like he and I had talked. We haven't talked, guys. But it's the truth. If you're in this room and you don't have a relationship with God, that's not God's fault. Quit blaming Him. That's your fault. Because He made everything available to you. He's made the information available to you. He's made the process available to you. He's made a Savior available to you. All you have to do is do what He tells you to do. He said, he that believes and is baptized will be saved. He that believeth not will be condemned. That's what Jesus said. I didn't say it, He did. And so if I have that relationship, and I have that, So that means whoever, I'm dwelling in the shelter of the Most High, I'm going to rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I'm not going to have to find some tree somewhere 40 miles away to rest all alone and to wallow in self-pity. I can rest with God. Why? Because I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. He's my fort. He's where I take refuge. If I start taking refuge in myself, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to get sick, or somebody's going to leave me, or somebody's going to get hurt, or I'm going to lose something, and that is going to be shown how fragile it is at best. It is time for me and for you to take refuge and allow God to be your fortress. See, that's what Elijah forgot. He took off running because he forgot that God wanted to be his fortress and his rock, his refuge. And then he says, surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. There isn't anything that you can get into that God can't save you from. You understand that? There is nothing you can get into. I don't care how childish you may act, there's nothing you can get into that God can't save you from. But He's not going to save you. He's not going to do that unless you allow Him to. You listen to me, guys. God can save us. God was the only answer Elijah had. He said, you need to wake up. You need to understand that I've got a plan and you don't know about that's fine, but I'm not through with you yet. He's not through with you yet. He's got something else for you to do. And I need to realize that I need to be looking up at God. I need to look at this and I say, He is the one. And in verse 2 it says, He, my God in whom I trust. What happened to Elijah's trust? He saw fire. He saw rain. He saw him and the people kill 850 people with a sword. What happened to his trust? Where did it go? Where is your trust at? What are you trusting in? What happened to your trust in God? If He is your Savior, if He's your salvation, if He is the one that saved you from all that stuff, then where's your trust? Where is it? Guess what? If you got healthy, you didn't get healthy on your own. Okay? He said, He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. I have the shield, Word of God. I have the Word of the Spirit, the shield. I have God as my refuge. God is my safety net. God is my fortress. And nobody can hurt me. Nobody. As long as I trust Him. As long as I stay in the confines of the fort and the fortress, they can't hurt me. It can't hurt me. Now, I may get sick and die. Okay? But if I'm saved by God, that can't hurt me. Understand? I may lose my job. You know what? Can't hurt me. My prospects of living may be very short indeed. It's all right. Can't hurt me. Can't hurt me because God is my fortress. That's what I learned from Elijah. That's what I learned. To look up. Quit looking down. Quit looking in the mirror. Look up. Look up at God and say, God, I need your help. I trust you. I believe in you. Please help me, God, to find my way back to where I need to be. Help me. God, I need to find my way to you. I need your help. And then don't say, oh, He didn't help me when everyone in this place tried to help you. There is a time now for us to sing and to stand and to make it known of an invitation. You know, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes on invitation. I'm going to tell you, Jesus said, he that believes and is baptized will be saved. God told me in this text, I will save you. I will save you. I will trust you. I'm going to take my refuge in you. You're going to be my protection. I trust you. Then get up and do what He told you to do. Let's stand and sing.